AI and NLP design, that is inclusive and ethical. Hannah is the advisor for Ignis in the field of artificial intelligence. And together, we are bringing you a piece of knowledge that should inspire you to build your systems in an inclusive and ethical way, so everyone using technology feel included and welcomed and not left behind. So with this in mind, I will start with a quick introduction, what Ignis does and what we specialize in, and why we have that knowledge to share with you today, and it's worth attending. Also, please be aware there is a menu on the side, on the right side, where you can send your questions. There is a question icon that you can use. There's also a chat, a space where you can just quickly comment, answer to our questions, and address your questions. And please do connect with us on LinkedIn, other social media channels that you prefer using. We are so looking forward to deliver this session and have you in our professional lives in the future, helping you out if needed. All right, let's start. Hannah will take over the next part. I would start with what Ignis does. So Ignis is a Dutch-American startup. We started in Amsterdam during the pandemic, and then we scaled to the United States, bringing our value of making any technology inclusive by design. And what we specialize in is digital accessibility. Inclusion for us starts with health. Yes, we do look at backgrounds, languages, and different aspects of inclusion in a digital world, but our primary focus is on health, health-centric internet design. We are building a solution that will help anyone to adjust the settings of their web browser, mobile apps, virtual experiences to the health needs of their own. And it's never the same. Every one of us has unique health profiles. We have about 2 billion people with disabilities. The whole world is aging. It's inevitable. So the health changes as well. Therefore, with our solution, we're building it in the way that whether you are healthy or have some unique superpower related to health, you are included in the digital design of AI systems, of interfaces, and immersive experiences. Now, in our session today, we'll address how can you build your systems in an inclusive and ethical way that will help your business grow fast and create loyalty and love from your communities and your users. Woo! I'm not sure what's going on. I'm sorry for that. That was fast. Let me try it again. Hannah, may I ask you to actually introduce yourself? I need to step out and come back in. Just please a second. Sorry for that, everyone. My system is funny at this moment. 1 second. I'll be back.
No worries. I can take over. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here and to be speaking to all of you. I hope you've had a great day so far. My name is Hannah Claus. I'm currently a PhD student here at the University of Cambridge. I'm specifically focused on NLP and AI, and there's so much I'm going to talk about later as well. But I think in order to just get the room, I want to know where are you guys from? You know, what languages do you speak? What is represented? Because I'm half German, half Ethiopian, and to me, you know, whenever I try to use any language models, some work really well in English and in German, and then as soon as I use them in Amharic, for example, one of the languages in Ethiopia, they just don't work anymore. So I would really love to hear you guys and your languages that you speak, and whether you've actually used any of those language models in your original languages. Because I talk to so many people and they just use it in English and they don't even think about using it in their native languages. So feel free to pop it in the chat and just let me know. But also in general, I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now when it comes to AI and natural language processing and I'm going to talk about it later as well when Eve comes in again. But yeah, it's just been crazy. And I personally started with AI and robotics. And, I worked at the German Aerospace Center for a while, and it was just a great time working on robots. And then I realized, well, there's still so much out there when it comes to AI, and so much was going on that I just had to try something new. So I went into AI and languages, and halfway through my master's, ChatGPT came out. And that was just perfect timing, because now suddenly everyone thought that I wasn't building the Terminator anymore. I was just building silly chatbots. And at least, people knew what to talk about at this point, and people knew a bit more. And I really liked the fact that I could go into a room and, when it comes to, like, let's say if you are a dentist, everyone knows what you're doing. You look at teeth, right? But with AI, for such a long time, people didn't know. And now people are talking about it. So I'm so great that we get to talk about it today. And Eve is back here. So I'm going to give it back to you. Wait, I don't hear you, Eve.
How about now?
Yes.
All right. I was saying thank you so very much for introducing yourself and inspiring attendees to already source some information from you. Now, let's keep it for the second phase of our presentation, and I'll hopefully get to the slide I wanted to share with you. Okay, here we go. Now, show me a thumbs up if you know who Dr. Grace Hopper is, or some other icon that you're like, oh, I've never heard that name. I'll see the likes floating, so please do comment. All right, great. Now, why do I have this slide here as an opening slide? Dr. Grace Hopper is an American computer scientist, mathematician, and United States Navy Rear Admiral. She is known in the history of technology as one driving force, helping us get to the future. Put into practice her skills to define the ultimate language, the universal language that will help the humanity to communicate with the machines and machines communicate with each other. I'll take you back in time to 1950s. Governments, industries went crazy figuring out how to find a solution to their key problem. They had so many different systems, but every system kind of had their own language. And they didn't speak to each other. There was no machine-to-machine communication. They had to rewrite codes manually for each application, taking time, money, hiring costs, and so on and so forth. Not efficient, as you know. So in one of the key, let's call it stakeholder meetings, where governments, businesses such as IBM and big corporations were present, Dr. Grace Hopper was invited as a guest because she already showed what she can do to change the industry and the tech application in a different direction, so for the best. Now, she was in the audience, and sitting in this smoky room with a lot of men, she was kind of the only one in that audience. She was listening carefully, sitting like this, listening to everyone just beaking why they need this way and why their systems are more important. And someone raised the point saying, you know what, we can keep on beaking and figuring out what's important for us, but why don't we put time to find that universal solution that will help us enable the communication among the machines, simplifying the very intrinsic way of kind of moving forward, simplifying the way how we code and operate the systems. And then she, out of the blue, kind of woke up, went to the stage where the chalkboard was, turned around, had a pause for the drastic moment, and said, we've always done it this way, overcomplicating things, using the binary language. But what if we would take a moment and redefine the whole approach, making it not only easy for machines to communicate, but for us humans to communicate with the machines. What if, and she took the chalk in her hand and started scribbling on the board. What if hours worked more than 40, then calculate overtime? She put the chalk down, turned around, looked at them all. They were like, what the heck is going on? What is she doing? What is this? What if could be the language approach to humans using their own key language, in our case, English, to write the code, making it not only easy for the professionals and specialists, but everyone in the world trying to get into the coding sphere, write the code, and build their own applications for their creative ideas. Silence across the whole room. That moment defined the beginning of COBOL, the language that changed the perspective on things, how we code, how we bring the world together, how we include people in the world of machines. And that step, the first step of inclusion in technology, really redefined everything and led us to the future we know now. So if I am to simplify this little story, the mother of COBOL is actually the grandmother of prompting. And if you give it a thought, this lady, woman, made the world so much better and easier to operate, navigate for us, like us in this space right now at this conference. We use so many tools, ChatGPTs, Capgeminis, Capgeminis, what am I saying? I'm going into already industry specifics that I plan for later. Copilots and all the different tools that you can use, Geminis and so on. She gave us that chance to ideate, to be very kind of at ease with our ideation, coding that in simple language. Now, starting there, we'll go further into diversity. Diversity is multifaceted. So we all know there are men, there are women, there are also non-binary people with fluid identities, and this is a fact. It's not binary. We are so different. Sometimes you wake up very, feminine. The other day you feel masculine. And it doesn't have to redefine the stamp of your identity in your passport. But we kind of leave it in such a fluid dimension that it's okay to be you. Whether the laws are defining us by the stamp on the passport, well, that's another thing. But we can be whoever we want to be. But I hope we are the ones who bring good to the world and doing it in the right way. So you see, there are already diversity in genders. Then we go into diversity in backgrounds. People who are 1% of the population with a lot of money, people who are struggling to make money, people who are C-level, VPs, CEOs, others who are early stage in their careers, students trying to understand the world and how to take that path into the future. People who are coming from different cultures. Maybe you are from Cambodia, maybe you're from Egypt, maybe you are from America, maybe you are from Germany, the UK. Your culture is well attached to you. So not only the location. What if you are, you were born in one country, but you grew up in another and then you traveled the world? Well, you're a citizen of the world because you understand those cultures, those differences, and you can relate to them. So only once we start looking at diversity in a different way than binary, we can really find a solution how to include everyone in our design, whether it's UX, user experience, or via code, coding the systems. Now, I know, don't do this to me. Hannah, can you take over with my presentation on the slide of health, please. Okay.
Will do.
Okay. See, team power, that's the most important thing. You need to be surrounded with people who are in it with you. So I need to stop sharing. Stop sharing. Okay, thank you so much. Now, diversity, also what's neglected in diversity, and it's just apparently what we've always done that way, is health. And why Ignis prioritizes health is that we all have different aspects to our health. Some people are blind, some people are losing their vision, some people have paralysis, Parkinson's disease, tremors, so their hands are shaking or they barely can, use their body to navigate and operate. Some has auditory difficulties, being deaf, losing their hearing, speech, same way, sensory, you have vertigos, your head goes spinning if you are, for example, an immersive experience that is too fast, too dropping down like at every point. It becomes very challenging, causing health problems and maybe epilepsy as well. And then you have another dimension, which is cognitive. All of us have different brains. Brains are great. We love our brains. And that defines our intelligence because we feed knowledge to our brain. But the processing of consuming that information and for brain to interpret it is completely different from one another. So if I have, for example, ADHD, where I am very fast speaking, kind of consuming that information, my challenge would be focusing on the right things, taking that moment to slow down. If I have autism, not necessarily, I'm definitely not fast, but I am looking through kind of a different sphere on the same content that we may have. We had one of the use cases, a boy who has autism, he thinks he's a fish. That's his thing. He can't study at school because school is not an ocean. And in one of our tests, we decided to build an immersive environment that has the ability to change avatars and interfaces, leaving the content same as at school. Like no change to the content, just the interface part. Now, he chose his avatar to be a fish, and he chose one of the scenarios offered, not school, not mountains, but ocean, with fishes next to him. You know what? His learning capabilities and abilities to consume that knowledge grew by 250%. So he could relate to the content that was trapped before in the environment that he could not work with. Now, once you're designing your systems, please be aware that every part of your code can limit people with their special needs and abilities in a certain way. We always need to be observant, stepping out from that bubble of how I imagine, how I think about things, and I think I'm right to give you that solution. Ask questions, survey people, understand their needs in relation to your product in order to grasp that information, that knowledge for yourself and build the system the right way. That includes men, women, non-binary people, people of different backgrounds and cultures, ages as well, and health profiles. So on the next slide, the companies that we love using their products, the companies that we love and we use their products, even if they're giants, they fail accessibility compliance. That means they fail that usability for people of different health profiles and cognitive needs. You can see a lot of cool pictures and structures of the website, but not necessarily it works with devices for people who are blind. Not necessarily it gives you flexibility of make the font larger in a way that your eye can see, or resize the built-in content, the coded-in images, or images that don't have alt text because those who put content together just really don't care or don't even know that you need to have alt text under each image describing what's in the picture. People with no vision can see the picture. They read what's in the picture. And that inspires them to take the action if they understand the content. So all these things, next slide, please, really affecting the internet world. The compliance regulatory boards take the first step forward. Well, they already took it for years, but they usually take the first step forward by regulating environments so other people can be involved and not left behind. This year is a crucial year for Europe, with Netherlands and other countries in the driver's seat. The European Accessibility Act comes to market, and that defines the game from June this year till, well, the future. Now, people can, the companies will be fined up to 1 million euros, dollars, if they are not compliant, not matching the specifics of the regulations, what they need to do. And those changes have to be in the native code, not using some overlay of some company that helps you just increase the fonts and change some visualizations. But it has to be in the native code. And if you do not meet that, you're fined. And people have the power now in Europe from June to start litigation, taking your company to court, which never been done that way. America is known for it, but not Europe. So for companies in America who already have to meet the regulations of Americans with Disability Act, or Canadians or the UK people, their businesses coming to Europe now have another level to address, another level of regulation, which becomes multi-leveled regulatory approach, and it is very expensive. You need to redesign, you need to follow, you need to track, you need to train your people, and you probably need to hire more because it's a different scope of work. So therefore, keep in mind, if you're building something including AI agents, there are different specifics in all of these regulations that cover not only traditional websites design, but mobile apps, kiosks on the train station, and AI agents that we're so passionate about, right? Next slide, please. So this is for AI agents. Write it down, scribble it in, or maybe on your chalkboard, because we don't want to do it this way ever again, breaching the compliance. Authoring two accessibility guidelines, what you need to learn. Web content accessibility guidelines is your foundation for anything, apps, websites, immersive experiences, AI agents, and user agent accessibility guidelines. So if you take it seriously, then you can develop something that is no risk, very inclusive, and drives you revenue growth, unlocking $18 trillion in purchasing power from people who have health difficulties. A lot of money, but huge impact as well. Next slide, please. All right. This being said, as an introduction, I want to take a moment and pass the microphone. Here you go, Hannah, to Hannah Claus, who already introduced herself. So I'll skip that part. Hannah and I work together in Ignis. Hannah advises us how to make our systems inclusive. Our product is not yet on the market, so stay tuned. It's this year. We will be sharing our beautiful solution for inclusive spaces online that everyone can benefit from. And today, Hannah is here to explain to you how you can build your products in an inclusive and ethical way. Thank you, Hannah. Take over.
Thank you so much, Eve. That was great. Okay. First of all, again, I'm glad to see so many people here, and I'm happy to share all this knowledge about AI ethics and NLP with you. As I already mentioned, in case anyone came in late, I'm the AI advisor here at Ignis, and I'm also a PhD student at the Language Technology Lab here at the University of Cambridge. And I started with AI and robotics, and now I'm in natural language processing. And this all was a huge journey. And ChatGPT definitely had an impact on this, because I realized that, you know, when everyone is talking about it, I kind of have to be in this space where everyone is at the moment, just to make sure that we're building something that actually works for everyone. Because, you know, otherwise, usually you walk into a room, and at least this is the case mostly in the UK, the people that work on these kinds of systems, they all look the same, they have the same background, they had similar upbringings. They are usually men as well. And then I realized that obviously they're only building something that works for them because that just makes sense to them. But there are so many other people out there, and we need to make sure that their views are also included. And that's what I'm going to talk about today as well. And I asked you earlier to maybe share some of your languages that you're speaking, because we're going to talk about natural language processing. And I would love to hear, what is your experience with some of the language models that you've been using, and do they actually work in your languages? Because they don't always work in my languages. But yeah, before I get into all of this, I just want to mention I want to build things, but I want them to work for everyone. And that's why we need to talk about inclusion. And that's why we need to talk about ethics, because otherwise we're not going to get there. So yeah, just to cover the background of AI, when everyone was talking about it back when ChatGPT came out, that wasn't actually the first phase. People had this phase way before. We were talking about AI, even a decade ago. It was just very focused and very narrow. So you had this, AI space where usually people with maybe a background in mathematics or physics came together, and then computer science, of course, and they were working on machine learning models. We had a lot going on in computer vision. So, for example, robotics. And so we were already talking about it, but it was very niche. So whenever I talked to anyone outside of that bubble about AI, they only thought of maybe the Terminator. That was about it. But ever since, ChatGPT came up, everyone's talking about it, and everyone knows what it is. And somehow even, the people around the corner know exactly what I'm working on. And that has definitely changed the whole way we build AI, the whole way we talk about it, and the whole way we think about it as well. Because now it's not just a tiny group that is building it. Now it's not a tiny group that is trying to figure out what it means. It is the whole world. So we have to think about the whole world as well. And today I'm going to cover a few basics, specifically in AI ethics. What does it actually mean? What are the different areas? But also, are there any specific examples? Then I'm going to go into natural language processing. So how does that work? What are we actually doing? What is a language model, really? How does it work on a basic level? And then, of course, in the end, how can we build large language models for everyone? So this is the overview, and I'm going to go right into AI ethics. So just a heads up, AI ethics, no one actually knows what it means, because we don't really have a proper definition for ethics, and especially AI as well. I don't know how many articles you've read or books or papers that all struggle to create one good definition of AI itself. People are trying to get in definitions from philosophy, from biology, from all these different areas, because we are still trying to make sense of what it actually means. But when I'm talking about ethics here, I'm talking about the ethical considerations and principles governing the development and deployment of AI systems, which means AI throughout all stages. It's not just what comes out in the end, the result. It's about everything from the thought in your mind to the actual product in the end. And along all these stages, there can happen so much that you might not even clock at the beginning, but they will cause problems later on. And that can be through, for example, bias. If your personal opinions suddenly end up in the algorithm that you're creating, or if the data set that you have only reflects one certain group of people, that's when you realize, if I'm building a facial recognition application and I only include, let's say, white men, it's not going to work on African women. So that's why we have to make sure that the data that we're using is diverse enough so it actually includes as many people as we can. But also, when it comes to privacy, who has access to your data? Because it is your data. And when you think about, let's say, medical data, this is sensitive information, and you should own that data. But also, if you upload it to any apps, then suddenly they can share it. and who actually reads the terms and conditions nowadays. So that's why we really have to think about privacy, how we can protect ourselves as well. And that's where safety comes in. We have so many accounts. I'm sure you signed up to different newsletters, you signed up to different groups. Your passwords are probably insanely long at this point. And how do you protect yourself if, for example, there's a data leak or if someone gets hacked? How do you make sure that the data that you're sharing is actually safe? And also, how are you staying safe on the internet? Because there are so many traps out there. So we definitely have to think about ethics when it comes to safety, because everyone is using it, which means also people that might be too young for it or that don't have the knowledge about, all the intricate things around AI, or just how they can be scammed. Let's say that. But then also accountability, because if you think about it, imagine you do something, you generate text, and you use that text later on. And maybe there are some mistakes within that text. Whose fault is that? Is that your fault because you generated the text and you created the prompt? Is it the fault of the company that built the language model? Is it the fault of the developer? Is it the fault of the people that actually use the text later on? There are so many questions, and we still don't have all the answers to this. And we need to start having these kinds of discussions, because otherwise so many people will be affected by it and they will suffer. And usually it's people that don't have the means to get out of this anymore. Imagine with the facial recognition application I mentioned, what if you go to jail just because your image was misclassified? Then who's going to help you? Who's going to believe you? And that's just because an AI model wasn't properly trained on specific data. Yeah. And that's why we have to talk about AI ethics. And you have to think about, what is the ultimate purpose of AI? Like, why are we even doing all of this? Because to me, AI is just a tool. It's just a means to an end. And it's a way we can help ourselves, we can help other people to have a better, quality of life, maybe. That's why we're trying to make it more inclusive, because, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to help everyone to have a better experience in life? And we want to create solutions for given problems. And that is just, making life hopefully better. But how do we do it the right way? And also, what is the right way? And who decides what the right way is? And, you can ask different people and they will have different opinions. They will have different answers to this. But I think the main thing is, if we want to build AI solutions, if we want to build products, if we want to build anything with AI, then we have to wonder, who are we solving these kinds of problems for? Because they will be the target audience. And if it means that we're building it for everyone, then we have to think about everyone. If we're only thinking of a very specific group, sure, that's great. Then you can focus on that group. But we have so many people in the world, and they all, most of them have access to nowadays. And if they are being part of the target audience, then we need to build these kinds of solutions for them as well. So it's not enough to just focus on, let's say, 50 people. So always keep in mind, who are you building this for? And just remember, your way is not always the same way that everyone else thinks. And we definitely have to have more kinds of conversations specifically from different areas. So not only from computer science or an AI background, also talk to social scientists, talk to people from humanities, talk to people from medicine, and so on. We have to start having these kinds of conversations, because otherwise, how are we going to build the best AI models we can? But yeah, there is one very simple example, and maybe some of you have seen it before. It is very basic. It comes from philosophy. It's called the trolley problem. Imagine you have a train and a train track, and in front of the train, there are 5 people on the tracks. You can't move them. So if the train just continues on its path, all these people are going to die. But there is a switch, and the train can go onto another track. But on this track, there's only one person. And now the question is, you're the only person at the switch. Will you make the decision to flip the switch so the train goes onto the other track and only one person dies instead of 5? But also, is it your decision to make? And is one life less worthy of compared to 5 lives? And does it change when, you know, people are of different ages? Let's say it's 5 elderly people and 1 young person. Who would you choose? Or if it was switched, 5 young people and 1 elderly person. But also, would you make an active decision? And the reason why I'm mentioning this is you can definitely translate that into certain AI scenarios. I'm not saying all of them, but there are some where, you know, you can see something like this already today. Let's say autonomous cars. Imagine you're in an autonomous car and you're driving down the road, and suddenly either you have to decide whether you're crashing into a tree, so you would endanger yourself, or maybe there's an elderly person crossing the road at the moment, or there's just a random baby on the street. So what do you choose? And also, how do you choose this depends on where you are in the world. You know, different countries have different cultures and different values and think differently about different people. But also it changes wherever you come from, what languages you speak, who you are as a person as well. And how can you reflect that in an AI model? How are you going to make that decision? Because imagine you are in that autonomous car. What will happen? And who is allowed to make that decision? So these are all kinds of problems that we have to think about. And that is definitely one step into the right direction, the fact that we're having these kinds of conversations. And it would be interesting to hear, you know, what are your points? Like, what do you think? What would you choose? Would you actually flip the switch? Or is there a specific scenario only where you would flip the switch? Because I think there is no right or wrong answer at this point, but it is something that we have to think about when we want to have responsibility and accountability within AI models, because they need to make a decision, and who is going to be blamed at the end of this? You know, is it going to be the companies, the people affected, and so on? But yeah, so obviously with large language models, there are still some problems out there, and yeah, I mean, you're probably all using them at the moment. And I remember when ChatGPT came out and no one knew what was going on. You would go to all these conferences and you would have the biggest people in AI on stage, and they completely scrapped their presentations, and instead they would just show screenshots of prompts on ChatGPT showing, okay, this is working, this is not working yet, and this is working, this is not working. And you would just be sitting there thinking, yeah, okay, but I can do that myself. I can figure that out myself. And we realized that OpenAI did not really give us any information whatsoever on the data that we're using to train the models, on any information really, the parameters, anything to that was connected to ChatGPT. So really, you know, the whole point of them being open AI wasn't really met. But nowadays, I'm generally very skeptical when I use large language models, just because I know how tricky it is to create something that actually works well. It takes so much data, and I know we don't have enough data yet, which means it can't be that good. So depending on your tasks, depending on when you use it, why you use it, just make sure that you are always questioning it, that you always think about, okay, there's probably some bias hidden, because there's no such thing as something unbiased. So always make sure that you question things, that there might be errors. And these kinds of language models, usually they're not very narrow to one specific use case, like let's say health or math. So they're very general, which means that if you use something like ChatGPT, it's going to be very general. And I'm sure over time there are a lot of updates and it's always improving, but you know, you can never be sure. So always be careful. And the question is, how can you double check? I mean, there are different ways. I would just suggest whenever you want to get a result, use several different prompts to get the best out of it. Look for accuracy. Look it up on the internet. Actually use Google to double check, because especially when it comes to numbers, language models are just bad because obviously they're trained on text, not numbers. So they see numbers as text. So in this case, when you do calculations, they don't actually calculate, they just predict what the result is going to be. So in this case, you just need to always be careful and just make sure that you double check, because this can have, so many impacts later on. But yeah, that's why we need to figure out how do we actually get to all these results. So this is called explainable AI. I'm sure you've heard it before. This is a whole research area, really, because we are trying to understand, what is actually happening. We have this kind of black box AI, and we feed data into it. We have a prompt, and at the end we get a result. But how do we get to this result? Why is this algorithm giving us this kind of result? We don't know, because at the moment we just know that there's this huge neural network in the background that is doing all the work, and it all depends on the data that we feed into it and the parameters and all the time and energy spent on it. But yeah, do we actually know why we get the specific results that we do get? And with explainable AI, we're trying to, make an AI system explain to us the decision it makes, and also understand, how ethical, how responsible is it, and is there maybe some bias and errors that we can then through that understand and improve. There's one very interesting example. It's about dog breeds, where there was this computer vision model where you would have images of dogs, and the model has to classify the dog breed. So, whether there's a husky or a German shepherd or whatever. The thing is, though, with huskies, for anyone who doesn't know, they're usually in very cold parts of the world. So in the background, there's usually some kind of snow. And when people were using these kinds of models, they were surprised because it was so great with recognizing huskies, but maybe not other dogs. And then later on, when they tried to look into what is the model actually focusing on the image, where is the most weight on it, they realized it is actually focusing on the background, so the snow. And based on the fact whether there was snow in the background or not, it would say, okay, this is a husky and this is not a husky. Yeah. How would you know this if you didn't check? So this is why we have to create all these AI systems that are more transparent and more explainable, so that we can understand how we get to these results. But because now imagine this wasn't just dogs, this could be your health data. And you don't want any of your data to be misclassified just because maybe there's some underlying pattern that you don't know of, and the people who built it also don't know of. But this is making all the decisions. So that's why we definitely have to always question everything that's coming out of these models. And we just have to make sure that we get all the answers. And also, even if you get the answers, how do you know it's actually a proper answer and it's not just, generating even more text? But yeah, that is a whole field again. And one big area within this is also algorithmic bias, as I mentioned it before. There are some huge projects that have been created now where people are looking into different biases. So I don't know if you've heard of the Gender Shades project by Joy Buolamwini. This has been incredible because she went through all these facial recognition applications used by all these big companies, and she showed that there is not just gender bias or just racial bias. It is so much more. So the error rate for white men for misclassification was 0.8%, not even 1%. And the error rate for Black women was 33%. So imagine every third Black woman is misclassified. That is insane. That cannot be an error rate that you use in your products, because you're going to be using it all over the world, and no one is questioning it, and all these people are being affected by it. So this is going to be used in hiring tools, for example, where, in this case, men would get the job more often rather than women, just because all the historic data showed that in the past, it was more men that got the job. So obviously in the future, it should be more men as well. That's what the model thinks. Obviously, this is not true. And but these kinds of models are still being used in these kinds of hiring tools. And then also when it comes to, just the justice system, how can you use something like this, a facial recognition application that is going to decide over the entire fate of a person's life, and you train it on biased data? To me, that is just incredible and ignorant. And I hope you can take something out of these examples and improve your products, everything that you're building as well, just to make sure that all the data that you're using is diverse enough, because this can affect everyone in the world, and this can, threaten people's lives. This can lead to existential crises. And there are always so many people talking about what is happening in the world later on, and maybe like 50 years, oh, AI is going to take over the world. But no, actually, right now, people are being affected by it. People are suffering because we create AI models that are biased and we don't check them. So please always double check, especially your data as well. So as I mentioned before, there's not really such a thing as unbiased data, because you have your own biases. Everyone has biases, and you just can't have all the data in the world. But just make sure that there is as little bias as possible. And always, when you design anything, have fairness in mind, ethics, as I mentioned before. Just think about, what impact does it have on the world, on different groups of people? Try testing it with different people. Even, go to your grandparents, test it on them. Go to your siblings, test it on them. Go to people with different jobs, test it on them. And always be transparent. Let people know how you built it, why you built it, who you're building it for, but also why are you making all these decisions that you're making? Because this is going to be more explainable, more transparent later on in the process. But yeah, we're going to talk about natural language processing now. And I mean, you're here, so you probably know more about it already, but it's basically the interaction between computers and human, specifically when it comes to language and text. So it's about deciphering and generating human language, which can either be speech related or text related or both. And, this has been going on for a long time, but only now we've gotten to a point where it's actually usable for most people. And, it's gotten a bit easier to work on. And that's why we have so many more algorithms and so many more people can build them as well, because finally it's become more accessible to the general public. And there are different applications. I'm sure you've used all of them before as well. Machine translation. So you're trying to, let's say, translate something from Spanish into Arabic. Then obviously you need to have data from Spanish, you need to have data from Arabic. And the problem is sometimes if there's not enough data in one language, it's being translated directly from English. So sometimes it would be from Spanish to English and from English back to Arabic, because there's just more data in English. The only problem is with that so much could be lost in translation. So always be aware. And if you use machine translation, just know that for smaller languages, it's not going to be as accurate as maybe in English. Then also text summarization, how do you get the most important bits out of any text? That is something that is using natural language processing. Question answering is your basic chatbot. Sentiment analysis would be, you're reading maybe a tweet or an article and you're trying to figure out, is it happy? Is it sad? Is it neutral? And so on. And with that, obviously, you would also have NLP in it. And text generation is your basic language model that is generating new text based on the prompt that you're giving it. So yeah, but how do we actually represent text? Because as I mentioned already, there are loads of examples from computer vision. The way computer vision works is, you have an image and the image is broken down into pixels, and then you create a vector. So basically in the end, you just have a long list of pixels. And through that, it can check whether what dog breed it is, for example. But with text, we don't have pixels, unless maybe you're looking at handwritten text, but then it would be a picture again, and it would be computer vision. And with text, we have to find a new way to do it. And the way we can do it is with this example. So it's called bag of words model. This is the most basic example you can look at. I'm trying to use this for you as well, so it's as inclusive and accessible to everyone here as well. Let's just imagine you have two documents. One says, oh, this is a dog, and the second document says, this is a cat. How do we represent this? Well, we just collect all the unique words we can find in all the documents. In this case, it's this is a dog, cat. 5 unique words. And we just collect all of them. This is now our corpus. And then we look back at the document and we think about, okay, So which words are actually represented in document 1 and in document 2? So document 1 has this is a dog, so they all get a 1, and cat is not represented, so it's 0. And the document 2 has it the other way around. And that's how we represent text, specifically and in the bag of words model. So we turn them into numbers, obviously, because we need the vectors for the neural networks. But if you look at any text, really, it's so long, and not actually every word is that important to the context of the text or in order to understand what the text is really about. So before we feed it into any model, we clean the data, which means that any mention of any unnecessary text, for example, this is a, these words don't add anything to any context, which means we delete them. Any numbers, we delete them. Anything, maybe names, depending on the context, we keep them, but specifically we look at anything that is adding context to our model as well. And then we create our corpus, and that's what we use to train a model. And what do we call large language models? It's just language models that have so much data. The only thing is, though, with this, we would get better accuracy, obviously, more data, better representation, better diversity, and better accuracy, you would think. The only problem is that with something like the bag of words model, it would just be way too complex, because we would just have this endless list of all these words and there's no context in between, and we wouldn't know how are all these words related to each other. So in this case, we have transformers. They came out in 2017 through a paper called Attention is All You Need by Waswani et al. And this paper changed the world when it came to NLP, at least, because suddenly we had a solution for context, because this transformer is using a self-attention mechanism. And with this, it can have all these long-range dependencies within text. So suddenly we can add weight to different words depending on the context that they're being used in and also the importance of it. So not every word is being treated the same, which is great, because now we can remember a few things about the text as well. And here's an example. Sammy said she likes dogs. Do you like them too? In a bag of words model, we would not know the context of it, and the pronouns them could be referring to Sammy and she to dogs. And now with transformers, we would exactly know, okay, she is related to Sammy and them is related to dogs. And through this, we can keep so much more attention and so much more information about it. So that's really why the transformers were so groundbreaking. And since then, everything has been speeding up. So 2017, that's not even 10 years ago. That it's very new. And that's why suddenly everyone is talking about all these language models, because it is only now so much easier to use. And now I'm going to talk about how can we build language models, specifically large language models, for everyone. So we're not going to just look at all the languages in the world. We're also going to think about, health profiles, disabilities, think about it. How do you use all these LLMs, even for yourself? If you've used any of the chatbots or large language models, have you found any difficulties? Maybe there's a problem when you use speech and it cannot recognize your accent. That would be really interesting to hear as well. So if you want to add that to the chat, just let us know what are the common problems that you've encountered, maybe because of your background, because of your language, or your disabilities. Because really, it makes such a difference. And this is all dependent on data. So when ChatGPT came out and I realized, everyone is trying it out. I tried it in German because I'm half German. I tried it in Amharic, which is one of the languages in Ethiopia. And suddenly it didn't work in Amharic. And I wondered, why is it not working? And also, if it's not working in Amharic, maybe it's also not working in other languages. And then I, went down the whole rabbit hole of data in large language models. So we have about 7,000 languages in the world, and these are only the registered ones, the official ones. There are still so many other languages out there that are not being registered because they might be so small, or it's only a small group that are speaking them, or they're just not documented. Which means that out of all these 7,000 languages, though, half of the internet's content is only in English. As you can tell on the graph here, suddenly, if maybe half of the world was speaking English, that would make sense because we would have more representation, right? But actually, English is only spoken by 1.5 billion people, and we have over 8 billion people. So it's not actually 50%. So how is it possible that there's so much English data out there? Well, I'm sure you know it because you I'm talking in English right now to you because I want you to understand what I'm saying. And this is how we create so much more content, because we want to reach as many people as possible. And somehow English has become the language that we all want to speak in order to communicate internationally. But only 26% of the people that speak English are actually native speakers. Can you imagine? This is incredible that we don't actually have this many people that speak English on a native level, and yet it has so much data available. And for example, an extra fact, Arabic is spoken by 380 million people, which is already a lot. And yet it is not even in the graph here because it is still not enough data compared to, let's say, Spanish, German, Japanese, French, Russian, Portuguese, Italian, and so on. It continues. But as you can tell, there's definitely a trend when it comes to more European languages because there's just so much more data. And there's also a lot of colonial history because there are so many countries that have been colonized and they were basically forced to speak some of those languages like English, Spanish, French, and so on. So in this case, we just have so much data. What people don't really understand, though, is that large language models only predict text. So they don't know anything. They're not really Google. They just predict the next word that is going to appear in the text. So as I mentioned before, you have all this corpus, all the text that we've accumulated through all the data that we have. And through that, we calculate probabilities for the next word that is being spoken. So let's say I'm asking, hi, how are you? Then what is the answer? Usually, I'm fine. So you predict, okay, what is the highest probability for the first word? It's probably I. Then you continue with what is the highest probability for the next word, and it's probably am and not, let's say, sleep or something else. And then you continue, and this is how a text is created. But the problem is, it can only create something that it has seen before, based on the data that we're feeding it. So if we maybe have a bias towards political text, then it's going to predict text based on the political text that we've used before. And it's all very easily biased based on all the data that we feed into it, which means that obviously if there's only English data, it's only going to be able to predict in English. And there's so much more. We just need so much more data in all these languages because it's great if it works in English. But if we want this to work for everyone, we just need to make sure that all the languages in the world are being included. So there's one example. Basque is a tiny place in Europe between France and Spain, and they have about 500,000 people. So 500,000 people. And they have 6 times more Wikipedia articles online than Swahili, which is spoken by about 150 million people across several African countries. And yet they don't have that much data as Basque, this tiny, tiny country. And then you wonder, how is this possible? There are so many more Swahili-speaking people, so why is there not more data? Well, that's when you realize data is also connected to all these socioeconomic values. It is not just the text that we see on paper. It is so much more, because suddenly you think about the infrastructure. Does everyone actually have access to internet? Does everyone have ways to communicate in their own language through the internet? Because maybe, let's say in Amharic, they need a specific alphabet because it's just not like the English one. So in this case, we need to find more ways to include more people in the world so they can access more content on the internet, so they can add more data. but also in an ethical way, because also we don't want to just exploit them again. There are so many big tech companies that just waltz into all these countries and say, oh, just give us all your data. We will build the solution for you and you don't have to think about anything else. And this is where I think, no, this cannot work, because who are you to say this? Language is so much more than just the text. It is the way you see the world. It is culture. It is identity. It is sometimes even religion and traditions and so on. And this all weaves into language and also text, which means that if you want to build an AI model for a specific language, you need to talk to someone that at least knows the language or the culture behind it, because otherwise it's not going to work, And it's really important that we think about it from a different angle as well, where we can maybe empower some communities so they can find a way to build their own models. Because I think right now we have a problem where we just assume we know better, so we do it for other people. But actually, they are the experts. They know the language, they know the culture, and they can tell you so much more, and we can learn so much more as well. Because there are so many languages, and so many are struggling to keep their identity alive as well. Around every 40 days, one language goes extinct. So the number of languages is slowly shrinking. And that is usually, also because, well, people are dying. It's a natural thing happening, obviously. But because we have so much more access to the internet, and it's mostly in English or other very European languages, suddenly people, instead of learning their own languages or keeping their own languages alive, they learn one of those European languages. And with that, I think there's so much sadness, because with this, we could be preserving people's cultures as well. If you go into South Africa, for example, there are so many languages, and the language shapes your identity because it has so much more history connected to apartheid as well. And in Zulu, for example, there is no word for dinosaur or really evolution, which means that we first, before we can even build an AI model that can tell you something in Zulu, you need to create those words first. So there's so much work that has to go into this. And obviously, we want to make this more accessible to everyone. So we don't want to force everyone to learn English, which is insane. I don't think everyone should know how to learn, how to speak English in order to use these kinds of technologies. And all these communities, they know how to do this. There's so many incredible people there, and they just need the tools, they need the resources to build all of this themselves. But yeah, where are we at the moment? I think we're at a crossroads where this can go either way. Either we're just going to rely on all these big tech companies to do it for us, but you'll know that they're not actually going to care about you or your language or your culture. Or we can find a way where we can collaborate within smaller communities so that we can create more data ethically, and then also bring this together to create language models that actually represent your culture, your communities, your values, and you're not dependent on some kind of big tech company to do that for you. Because also then you have more control over the things that you want to represent within those language models. But yeah, here at Cambridge, I have to say, it's quite the bubble. You have a lot of, well, let's say, privileged people that sometimes don't really think about other people. So I get questions like this: what could other communities possibly tell you that you don't know already? And I'm usually shocked, because I think, what do you mean? There's so much out there that I personally don't know. And the only way I can know about this is by talking to people. For example, talking to you, asking, what is it that you need? What is it that doesn't work for you? How would you like to build something? And how can your needs, how can your maybe disabilities, your preferences and so on, how can they be respected within all the AI models that we're building nowadays? Because I'm only one person. I won't know this about you, about every culture. So I need to know this by talking to you. So if you want to share anything, please put it in the chat, because I think, to me, it's really important to know, okay, there are so many different views out there in the world, and I cannot just assume that I know everything, because, that would be just too ignorant. But then I also have people, when I talk to them about this, they say, oh, wouldn't it be easier if everyone just spoke English? And then I wonder, well, that's the whole problem right now, because, you know, we had so much colonialism, so much history on this, where people assumed that it would be better if everyone spoke the same English, the same language, and if everyone had the same values. But I think with this, we're just losing so much diversity. We're losing so much about cultures and everything else. And it would be just absolutely ignorant to assume that everyone just should speak English. So to me, if you're working on anything within AI and you're representing your own culture, your own languages, please continue doing that, because I think this is the only way we can fight back. And just make sure that you include as many people in the process as you can that also can share their points within this space as well. And if you want to hear more about, you know, the dynamics between big tech companies and how they are building language models, and also how smaller communities are building it, I recently wrote an article on this, and you're welcome to read it and let me know what you think about it, because, you know, this is all focused on low resource languages, where we're basically looking at all the languages that don't have enough resources. And that is basically anything that is not English. But obviously you can't just say that, as I mentioned, with Basque and Swahili, because not every language is the same or has the same infrastructure or the same resources to create more data as well. So this is how we definitely have to distinguish between different languages, because nothing is the same, you know, and we have to definitely talk about this so everyone can use AI and all the different models we are building at the moment. And if you want to be active, there are so many different organizations that are working on having more data, on building fairer AI models, specifically in Africa as well. So all these organizations are doing so much incredible work, and they always look for extra people to help with data collection, with testing, training, and so on. So yeah, they're just incredible, and we need people like this. And that's why with Evenness as well, it's a constant fight. We're always trying to make it more accessible to everyone, to include everyone in the conversation. But, you know, not everyone is always listening. So I'm glad that you're here and that you're listening and that you're trying to make things more inclusive and better for everyone else. And here are just a few tips if you're starting out when it comes to language models, just, you know, in general. First of all, have a GitHub account. I would definitely recommend that. If you're coding, if you're building your own projects, or if you're trying to just, you know, start right now, I would definitely recommend just going through different tutorials. There's so much open source material out there, and you can use so much. And I think it really helps everyone to understand how these kinds of models work if you've built one yourself, because it's not actually that hard. You can all learn it. And Python is very easy to understand as well. It's like speaking another language, but just easy. And to me, that just helped to understand, okay, this is the technical layer. And now I want to build something. How can I incorporate all the values that I have and all the values of other people, all the preferences that they need into this language model? And to me, I think it's just very important to be surrounded by people that think like you as well, but positively, of course, so that you can get new ideas. They can support you in everything that you're doing. And also, you know, to know that you're not alone. If you have a lot of anger, if you have a lot of motivation to change something because, you know, maybe something isn't working for you right now, just surround yourself with people like you, because they will keep you working on this as well. And anything for coding, these are some great tutorials. I think they just have so much data available that you can use in order to maybe build your own models to help yourself and to learn more about the languages. And yeah, in general, I think there's just so much to learn, and just keep on going, keep on knowing what you're doing, and hopefully we can build better AI models for everyone together. Yeah. So conclusion, this is it. We're all going to work on AI because it's unstoppable. We have to keep up, you know, but we also have to make sure that we set rules and regulations, that we all make sure that it's working for everyone. And especially when it comes to LLMs, we want it to work for everyone, because right now, you know, people are talking about it. And we don't want people to be completely excluded just because they might not speak the same language, or they have an accent, or they don't, they have certain disabilities that keep them from using these kinds of applications. And yeah, everyone can code. So I hope you get started and try something yourself, and good luck with everything. Thank you. That's it. Yeah, Q&A. So I think if you have any questions, we still have some time left. I would happily answer any questions that you have on anything, really. I'm sure Eve as well. So yeah, please let us know if you have any direct questions. Okay, there's a question. Eve, I don't know if you want to take that. Is there an update on inclusivity and ethical usage on the new field of emotion AI? I'm not quite sure what you mean by emotion AI. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, then I'm sure Eve is coming back as well. But yeah, if whoever asked the question, could you please clarify what you mean by emotion AI? Do you mean AI that can imitate human emotions? Okay. Okay, I'm just going to continue answering some questions. I see one in the chat, a comment about OpenAI mainly being focused on English-speaking people. Yeah, I agree. They just look at the money, and I think there's just a lot of money in the one language that most people can currently use on the internet, because if there's so much out there, so much English data, then obviously they're going to make use of that because it's just going to work better in that language. But I want to make an effort that everyone in the world can use these kinds of models without actually pushing them to learn English, because I'm sorry, it's already hard to learn your own language. There are so many people that are illiterate within their own language, and why can we then expect them to learn yet another language just so they can have access to the technology that other people are using? So I think in this case, we just need to make sure that everyone can be included in this. But yeah.
So I'm back again. Can you hear me well? Okay, perfect.
Yes, I can.
Hannah, thank you so much. That was a wonderful, very thorough presentation. We didn't show the code part just because it will not enable you just looking at the code at this moment. The foundation needed to be covered. Hannah is a mastermind when it comes down to code, but she's always, as a professor, I would say, or PhD person, structures the information that it first covers the foundation. I hope it's not the last talk for us, and when we can deep dive into the code in the next rounds, and hopefully being present physically at the next DSC MENA conference. Hannah, there is a question. I'm not sure if I missed that part that you already addressed it, but we have a question in our chat. Is there an update on inclusivity and ethical usage on the new field of emotion AI?
Yeah. I asked already if someone could say exactly what they mean about emotion AI, because the way I would understand it is maybe AI that is imitating human emotions. Because I've read a lot about current characterization of AI models so that they can imitate maybe a happy person, a sad person. And this obviously has to be trained on a lot of data. And then you have to process a lot. And the thing is, the way you are being happy is different from someone else being happy. And there's so much bias already when it comes to, let's say, facial recognition and your emotions, because people from different cultures express themselves differently when it comes to emotions. But also, if you're neurodivergent, you might express yourself differently already. So it doesn't actually matter where you come from, you just show emotions differently. And that is not being included in any of the data sets because they just assume everyone is the same. But we're not. We all have so many differences, and we should definitely be thinking of those when we create anything that captures emotions. So there's definitely so much going on in this space. People are working on making it less biased, basically. But I think when it comes to emotional AI, the thing is, that's where we make it look human. And I personally have a problem with it because I think we need to make sure that we still have this clear line between humans and just a language model, because it's not sentient. It doesn't have a brain. It does not have emotions. It is not human. And I know a few years ago, there was this whole scare of a person from Google saying, oh my God, it's sentient. That personally, to me, was very irresponsible, because there are so many people that just don't have enough knowledge about AI that are going to believe this because this comes from an AI expert in the field that is working on this, and he says something like this, and suddenly people are going to believe it. And I think this is just very dangerous because we then associate human values, human attributes with an algorithm that is just calculating different numbers, really. So in this case, we have to be very careful. And that's why I will never think of a robot or an algorithm as having, for example, a gender or any pronouns. I'm not going to say he or she or they, them. I'm going to call it, because it is just a language model, and it will only be able to imitate emotions but not actually have emotions itself. And I think in this case, it's just very important to know that everything you're working on is clearly just a simulation. And then if you want to use any data, just make sure that it's as diverse as possible.
That's a great answer, Hannah. And it links to one of the questions or statements in our chat field. Please have a look. Actually, there's a lot of cool things shared. What you think about AGI? And Abdurrahman, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, thank you for your statement. Because in the motion with AGI, what scares me the most, we are trying to have this leap jump into the AGI-enabled future when our foundations are not really there yet. So what we're doing, if we are actively building that AGI world, we are excluding people because they are not yet included. We are making the systems very biased, and we are kind of risking giving the chance for humanity into the hands of a machine who does not have emotional intelligence, who does not care about what's right or what's wrong. It's just trained on the historic biased data at this moment that makes decisions based on that historic biased data. And if you give the right to operate the world based on historic biased data, oof, it's not only that it's in English to be, it's going to be very scary what the prompt outcomes, the code outcomes will, bring to life. So I'm always, when I'm talking to the experts in this field, I was like, hold your horses. We all want to get there, but our foundations are not yet set to have this jump into the future. Now, speaking about what your foundation has to include besides ethical AI, inclusive AI, is sustainability. Because sustainability is interlinked with accessibility. What Hannah addressed in her speech is that not everyone has internet. So the way you build your systems, it defines whether they can access them. Imagine you put that image on your website that is 5 GB because you didn't care, you thought it's okay, you didn't check, and you didn't care to check in this case. You just upload it to your website. Well, that image will never launch on the internet of someone who doesn't have a good stable internet connection. So then it's all blank, all messy, and your content is going to leave the message. Also, how your CPU power, how you design your systems for interoperability, your consumption of CPU power. Because, like right now, what happened? My system became crazy in a way, replicating all my screens, using a lot of CPU power, excluding me from that experience that we're having here. So then what caused it? I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's this platform, but something in the taskbar just really decided to play a cruel joke because two systems were not interoperable. Now check everything you build. Quality assurance is important. And that defines your foundation. Don't wait till the last moment when you finish your product and then say, okay, now I can check it. No, everything, every AI component, every AI system, agent interaction, whatever you're building, test it. In the moment of, okay, this task is done, test it. Next task, test it. Test how the first task and the second task work together. Go to the third task. Do not leave it till the last moment. It's accessibility, inclusion, sustainability is not an add-on. It's the underlying factor. And with this being said, let me check if we have more questions or if Hannah wants to address any point.
Yeah, I would like to say a few things. First of all, on the AGI question. It's a very valid question because everyone's talking about it, you know. You hear AGI literally everywhere you go. And to me, it's quite intimidating because I feel like people don't actually know what they're talking about when they're talking about AGI. Because, again, as I mentioned earlier as well, there is no proper definition of AI. And now we even have more of a problem because there's no definition of AGI either. And it all depends on the people that are using this term. And they all try to wield it in a way that it works for them. But actually, they're just thinking about themselves, really. And they're thinking of a very small group that it would work well for. And the rest of the world would just be completely cut off. And, you know, it's great if it works in English, let's say. But as I mentioned also, only 1.5 billion people in the world speak English. Let's say that's about 7 billion that don't speak English. And to me, that means it's not really going to work for everyone. You know, if 7 billion people are completely excluded out of this, then why are we even bothering? So that's why I think the remark you made, Alexa, you found the exact problem. You know, you have all these amazing companies that just have so much money. And they are doing so much, and they have so many computing resources, but they care about their own profit because they know exactly how much they can get out of this, specifically with the hype. The main thing is, though, everything that you're seeing right now is more of an echo chamber, so it will just reflect everything you're thinking already. What it doesn't show you is all the people that are not being included right now, because if all of these languages are not being included, then sure, it's great if 1.5 billion people who know English can use your applications, but 7 billion people won't be able to use them. And I think in order to have more people that are going to be interested in using AI within their products, within their everyday lives, even in governments, you know, if you don't have any responsibility and any accountability coming from OpenAI, for example, how can a government or a hospital use something from, let's say, these companies without actually knowing what happens in the background? So I would like to motivate them to create their own ones. I know it's really hard. You need your own resources and so on. But I think in this aspect, it's very important to just tell communities, you know what, you can do it. I can help. If you need my resources, let me know, because I just want to make sure that we don't need to rely on big tech companies.
Yeah, monopoly is one thing, but ideation and creativity coming from community is a big thing. And unfortunately, it's limited by resources. We do not start with $1 billion in our pockets to bring our solutions to life. It's a constant challenge to win the battle in the market. At the same time, it should never demotivate you. It should push you forward to find the investors, to find the companies who believe, or community members who believe in your idea, bringing community together to solve that challenge, whether it's language, whether it's health usability, health-centric design, or something else. Just constantly think who your allies are and bring them together. That's at least how Ignis operates. We didn't have $1 million in our pocket. We have to use the tools that sometimes open source, sometimes we pay for the underlying factor. At the same time, we bring people who are passionate about the challenge and passionate about solving the challenge. And we work together to kind of address it as a community of allies. And I think this is the strongest way forward, because people are building for themselves, for their people, for their families, for their friends, in order to solve their challenges that very affect the lives of their closest ones. And then it scales throughout the world, helping others to be also supported and included. So therefore, with this final, I think, message, I want to say thank you so much for your time, for being here, for paying attention to our words and descriptions of language models, large language models, and everything else, for your questions. Please do join us on our community mission to make the world more health-centric, intuitive by design, emotionally stable by artificial intelligence, and also efficient in the way that we have tools that help us, human beings, to make our lives better, more productive, and to change the world to the best that we know. Hannah, thank you for being here. And Sarah, here's the microphone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, even Hannah, for wrapping up with a powerful reminder that good AI is also responsible AI. And I have to give a hats off to the speakers this day, with girl power all the way. Okay, so that's it from Stream 3. Thank you for being with us throughout the DSC MENA 2025 online session. We hope to see you if you're joining us in Egypt. See you tomorrow and live for the upcoming ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.